All right. Well, at least I got the chapter done. Mark that off. There we go. All right, so this is the Afterburn. So if you have comments or questions, feedback about what I just taught, you're welcome to come on up here to the mic. Paul's got the mic up here, so I'll hand it to each person as they come up. And on the live stream, we've opened up the chat so you can start typing in. And the Shamish team that's on there now of, let's see, we got Rob and Gary who have got most of that covered there. They'll take down your comments and questions. All right, we'll begin with Neo. The camera's not even on you, so it missed it. So I mean, that's it.
You can see it.
I got to see it. Okay, it's Mercy. Mercy without a last name.
That's right. So you said, what is going on with my brain today?
I've been trying to figure that. Never mind.
That's cute. That's cute. It was that Stuyvesant reference that got me off.
See, we don't have that problem at Stuyvesant. See, that's number one.
Okay, that's cute.
See,
that's cute.
You guys, that's why you were in Brooklyn Tech. That's
whatever.
Yes.
So,
rival high schools.
Rival high schools.
Yes.
So you said that. Oh my God! What is happening? Wait, hold on.
That's why you. That's why you were at Brooklyn.
It's all those drugs. No. No, I don't do drugs. I don't do drugs. Say no to drugs. You were talking about, because I wanted to reference
Okay, so I was talking about people who do things that are embarrassing in public, and you're helping people see what that could look like. So thank you for that reference.
I'm glad I can be an example.
There you go. And we all appreciate you.
That's right. That's right.
Yes.
Kids, this is what you don't do.
Yes.
But, okay, so you were...
This is my brain on live stream. It shuts off.
It's real. It's real. Hashtag real. So you were talking about the... Dag, every time I get it, it just escapes me. But it was about Matthew 18. I wanted to reference Matthew 18 to it.
Okay,
so,
which we are going to cover soon.
Yeah, because I wanted to know how that plays. Oh, I know what it was. You said draw nigh to him, right?
Yes.
And then you say
I didn't
that,
say nigh, but okay.
Well, King James, trying to get it out.
Okay.
So you said draw near to him, and that we have to do it first, right? And then you talked about the prodigal son. So how does Matthew 18 work into that? Because the church is always saying that, you know, they even have a song about it, that he'll leave the 99 to go after the one.
Right.
So how does that fall into place with you've got to do the prodigal son thing first?
Okay, so I know I'm going to cover this. It's in my notes already, but I don't know when we're going to get to it, so it may be a little while. When we start talking about sin against each other, because that 99 into the one leads right into if your brother sins against you. Okay? That Matthew 18, literally like the next verses go right into that. Okay? So, the 99 and the one. So what do you have with the one? Okay, first of all, they're all your sheep. All right? And then one strays off. Now, the one straying off is not like in the corner shooting up doing drugs. It just got lost. Okay? All right? It's not like just doing horribly wrong sheep things. It just got a little off the path. And so you would go over and notice, hey, I think you're getting a little off the path. And you would go, hey, we need to get you back over here. So that's different than somebody going way into terrible things. If someone has got a little confused and off and sort of drifted away, you may want to go after those. And really, the reference of the 99 and the 100 is really and the 99 and the 1 is trying to talk about the lost sheep of Israel, which comes in an earlier verse in 18, where he says, I've not come except for the lost sheep. And so the idea, okay, is that it's talking about those that had been scattered, and I'm not here for the ones that are here, they're here. I'm here for the ones that have left, gotten scattered, and gotten lost, and try to work their path back. And that's bubble popping, really. Now, with the sheep is not just you going over there, but you have to go over there and get its attention, and then it has to follow you that way. But in your case, with a human being, he pops your bubble, and then you realize you need to start looking. You're looking for what? You're looking for the shepherd, okay? And so you start looking for that shepherd from that point of view. And by the way, that is the Rabbi Mercy Show. We do this every Saturday. No. Okay. Welcome to we should do that. We should do like a podcast. Okay. Anyway. What'd you say? There you go. I don't think I want to say that out loud, but okay. She said she'll be Robin to my Howard Stern, but that's okay. See, I don't know if I like that reference. I always thought Robin was smarter than him. So I see where you were trying to go. I get it now. Okay, number 3, number 1. Okay, just remember that. Okay. Mr. Conabear, please take us out of this nonsense.
Thank you, Rabbi. My question pretty much covers 2 teachings. One teaching I heard yesterday was CC 101, Are You Committed? And it falls also into today. For those of us who have never laid with another woman, how do we commit adultery?
Okay, so there's adultery in literal and there's adultery in type, okay? Because Scripture, the Father tells us over and over again that when we go after other mighty ones, it's like committing adultery, okay? And so the literal, well, you can't really commit adultery without actually having sex with somebody. So that part, literally, if you don't do that, then you're not going to commit adultery. However, okay, Yeshua took it a step further. He said wanting to do it is like committing adultery. So, inappropriate interaction with somebody not your wife, or interacting with someone who's someone else's wife. Okay, what if you're single? You could be interacting with someone who's married. That also could be pushing in that direction where we might label it adultery. Because Yeshua said the desire to sleep with her was breaching it already. And so even though you hadn't taken the actual physical action to follow through. Okay, so we have 2 possible ways that for someone in your situation that would be able to commit. One is a level of interaction with a married woman because you're single. Okay, so we should not be, listen, everybody needs to really get this. I've said this a lot in the last couple of months. Men and women, ladies and gentlemen, no social interaction, okay, social, if you're married with the opposite sex, okay? We are not texting, we're not friends with, we're not liking each other's pictures and comments and posts and stuff. No social interaction with someone who is married if you're single, and if you're married with nobody other than your spouse, okay? No social. That doesn't mean if somebody posts a question or something and you post some sort of a comment or answer to it, that's fine. It's not a social thing. Okay, but if someone makes a social post and you make some sort of social thing, basically like you guys are just having a good time conversing back and forth, we don't do that because that opens up problems. Okay? So you can't do that. All right? I don't have any women friends. I don't socialize with any women. I don't like anybody's posts. I don't comment on anybody's posts except my wife's, and even then I don't do it as often as I should. She gets mad at me. That's my fault. I should actually go and see her post and put hearts on everything and all that kind of stuff. But I would never do that on any of your stuff, anybody else's stuff. Okay? Because that's not appropriate. But yet I see married men putting hearts on women's posts or commenting all kinds of positive, little flirtatious or just encouraging, whatever. Stop it. You have a wife for that, okay? If you're single, you need to be out there looking for the potential wife for that. Stop talking to ones that are already married. Okay, you don't need to be doing these things, all right? I know some of you are thinking, well, you have a bunch of daughters that are really not your daughters. Yeah, but I don't socialize with them. I'm like a father to them, and I deal with them in those kind of roles, but we don't socialize. Okay, I don't socialize with anybody but my wife. All right, that's it, socially. Everything else is me being either the rabbi or being whatever, the dad or something. I'm not being something, I have a role that's actually a role. Okay? So please, let's stop that. Because otherwise we end up with things that could lead to what Yeshua would even call adultery. Very, 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 very problematic. We've had some leaders have that problem. We've had some members have that problem. You cannot be socializing. I don't know how to emphasize this. Okay, you just can't do it. All right? You just cannot do it. All right, John.
You said there was 2.
Well, no, it said, so the one would be the spiritual side of it and one would be the literal side of it. So literally, if you don't have the sexual interaction, you're not literally doing it, right? The other side of it is these other things that can be interpreted and can lead to it being, from a spiritual point of view, adultery.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And I know some of you guys are just like went in one ear and out the other, but you got to knock it off. And ladies, don't let them do it. If the men are doing it, you report them to me, to elder, to somebody if they're in the congregation, and we need to put a stop to it right away. And you need to tell them, hey, you need to not be interacting with me socially. Okay, you're married, I'm not, or I'm married, you're not, or whatever it is. Or maybe you're both married, but not to each other. Okay? Well, I was just being a friend. You cannot do that. Can I get strong enough with that? I don't know what else to say. Nobody listens. They do it anyway. Stop it. Okay, stop it. You need a friend? Find an appropriate friend. You're a guy? Find a guy friend. You're a woman? Find a woman friend. If you're married, how about being friends with your spouse? I mean, go figure that out. Okay, but it does not ever go well to do anything other than that, okay? Because you know what? A man and a woman cannot be friends, I'm telling you, without at least one of them wanting more at some point. Maybe you're not the one that wants more, but maybe you cause the other one to want more. If it's not appropriate, it's not appropriate. Whichever one of you is the one that ends up wanting more, it doesn't matter. Okay? When I was young enough, before I was married, I had girls who were friends. And you know what? Almost always, one of us wanted more than that. Now, neither one of it never worked out where we both wanted more than that, so I didn't end up with any of them. Okay? Which is good, because I ended up with my wife. But the thing was, I thought I could be friends, or they thought they could be, but it never worked out. Because you can't. Somebody's going to want more. Oh, no. All right, believe whatever you want to believe then. Okay? And then when it blows up in your face, don't come to me. I don't care. All right? You're not listening. Okay, Janet.
Rabbi, thank you so much for today's teaching. So I have a couple of questions that relate to the same subject, which is pride, or being proud. The last verse that you read, which is, if you're to him, then who knows to do good and does not do it, to him it is sin.
Right.
So when it says that who knows, right, who knows to do good. So I was thinking about what we learn from you, what we learn from Torah, what we even hear from you when we go to counseling. So if we do not do that, that's considered sin. Just want to know if it's correct, and if that's true, is that also considered prideful?
Yes, I mean, look, if you need counseling and don't get it, if you need anything and don't get it, there's a pride issue, okay? If you don't want, anytime you don't want to deal with your stuff, whatever that is, maybe you don't want to get the medical treatment you need, maybe you don't want the therapy you need, maybe you don't, whatever it is, the financial counseling, it's a pride issue, all right? And
then when you were talking about pride versus being humble or humbleness, so to me, how I envision pride is kind of putting myself in a pedestal and the other one I'll put in a pit.
Right.
And so humbleness, is it equal as being meek?
Yes and no. I mean, meek is more of a quiet strength, okay? Humbleness is, I guess it's on a level, it's full ownership. It takes humility to just own, okay? Pride doesn't want to own anything, except it wants to boast. Boasting is not really owning, because you're boasting about something you don't actually own. Or it's pointing the finger. Instead of owning, you point and blame others. That's pride, okay? Or you make excuses, that's pride. So humility is fully owning, okay?
So humility is fully owning. So and I always go to my marriage because I feel like that's where I get to practice all this, right? So in a situation where you're dealing with your spouse, it's obviously humble to not respond in anger, right? But obviously at some point you need to communicate, like you said, your need. So how do you, so you come and you express your need, you express how you're feeling. what happens whenever, and I see that, I've seen that in my own marriage, but I also see that with couples a lot, that let's say your take on it or your version of it obviously is different than the other person's,
Right.
and it's hard to sometimes see eye to eye. How do you integrate the humbleness in that process? What will be your recommendation?
Okay,
I don't know
so
if it's an issue of pride or if it's not.
Well, yeah, pride, well, all right. So you asked something that's a little bit more complex than that. So first of all, let's understand that when you're dealing with humility, it's not just fully owning, but it also is owning it, recognizing your position. So if you're going to approach your husband, if you're the wife, you have to recognize that where you are in that vertical. If you're approaching your children and you're the mother, well, then you have a different place in the vertical. If you're the father or the husband, you have to recognize that role, but still own in reality what that role is. So when I say own it, does it? Well, I'm in charge. No, it's not. You never use the words "I'm in charge." Being in charge is a prideful thing. Okay, I tell people that I have the burden of responsibility for all decisions here. I don't say I'm the boss. I'm in charge. I have the burden of responsibility to make the decisions. That's a whole different way of looking. In my house, I have the burden of responsibility to make the decisions. Now, when you're talking about the second issue, which is you guys have something you want to share, the wife wants to share something to the husband, and you're not seeing eye to eye or you're not seeing the situation the same. That's a communication problem. But that communication problem is being caused by potentially several, it could be several different factors. One can be pride, okay, because when you're looking things through a prideful, filter, all these things I'm giving you are filters, right? So if I'm looking through pride as a filter, I'm going to see things in a perspective that doesn't have any ownership or humility to it. So I'm only going to be pointing the finger, blaming, etc. So that's pride, okay? Which is when I run into somebody and I'm counseling and the husband and wife are having a problem, and then one of them, let's say the wife says blah, 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 and I say, okay, that's great, but what was your part in it? Well, I didn't do anything. Well, I don't know. Let me ask him. And then he tells this whole long story. I go, well, any of that stuff? Well, yeah, but blah, blah, blah. Okay, so I have to get people to own their parts, at least, before we can figure out how to fix it, all right? The second thing is a communication thing that could be filtered by personality, could be filtered by different things, okay? Look, they don't do this much anymore, because I don't even think they make sitcoms and shows anymore the way they used to. But like when we used to watch back in the 70s, okay? In the 80s, they had these shows on TV, and once a season, they seem to like to do, some of these shows like to do these situations where you get to see the situation play through each person's eyes. And so there was like some sort of an accident that happened or something. And so they go through the one character, and they say, this is how they saw the whole thing play out. Then they have the next person, they play the whole thing back again, but the way they saw it. And they'll have like 4 different people with completely different things. Then they play what actually happened, which is not what everybody saw. But they all saw it through their unique perspectives based on their personalities and their pride or not pride issues and everything else. So we have to remember that we are not, most of the time, in reality. We're mostly in a delusion of some level because we have too many filters that prevent us from living in reality. When you come to me, one of the reasons why it works so well, if it works, or why it doesn't when it doesn't, is because I'm going to share with you a much fuller understanding of whatever your situation is in reality. And a lot of you don't want to be in reality. Reality is scary, okay? But I always tell you, reality fixes most things. If you can live in reality, we can fix things. When you're living in your delusion bubble, you can't fix anything. And so pride is one of the factors that will affect your ability to be in reality, okay? So when a husband and wife are having issues, if you approach your husband and you're approaching like you usurped on top of the vertical, that's a problem. If you don't have the ability to see anything as your fault because your pride only wants to blame, that's again pride. Pride can take different forms, okay? Okay, you're welcome.
Thank you so much. One more, very quick, Rabbi, I promise.
Okay, and by the way, the next counseling you do, I get 10%. Oh, wait a minute, I already get 10%. Never mind.
All right. I always use what you give me, always, and it always works. It's just so amazing how the blessing.
And I always use what you give me. The 10%, we always use it. All right.
So God willing is a word that my mom, she wouldn't say it in English, obviously. She would say, si Dios quiere, right? She always told us that from the very beginning. You always say God willing. You don't say, oh, I'm going to go this, I'm going to do that. I wanted to know if that's something that is correct or not. Thank you, Rabbi.
Okay. I'm not a big fan of always throwing out, well, if it's Yah's will, God willing, and everything else, because you know what? We don't always know what his will is with all kinds of things that we personally are doing. Okay, all we do is just put out as an intention. Okay, this is my plan. This is my goal or intention. It may work out, it may not work out, all right? Okay, Elder, when I first talked to him, his intention was to move here at a certain point. He didn't get here for another 2 years because things didn't work out. But he didn't brag and say, oh, I'll be there. I've had people tell me, oh, I'll see you in 6 months. I'm going to be there, and then they didn't show up, okay? But he said, look, I think I can get this worked out in a year, and then it didn't work out. And then some other things happened. But the intention was expressed as an intention. And so we don't need to have a Yah willing and all this other stuff, although you can certainly do that. I just don't like to bring his name into things unless I'm really comfortable that there's nothing that I'm going to bring it into that could be problematic. So some of you like to bring it in all the time, and then I don't think that really necessarily is what you need to be doing, okay? What you should be doing is making sure that we're not, what it says here, in sort of a boasting way. You're not bragging. Oh, somebody meets me at the feast and oh, you're going to see me. I'll be here by next feast. I'm moving here. I'm going to be here. I'm going to be your best student. They talk all this smack and then they do nothing, all right? But it's different if you came up and said, Rabbi, I am so just moved about what's going on here and I'm going to make every effort to be here. My intention is to be here before the next feast. That's totally different, okay? No need to throw Yah willing at the end of that, all right? Okay, Chris.
Okay, so first I had encouragement from my experience. My parents have always, it's been 8 years since my parents and I had initial conflicts with okay, I'm doing this versus I'm doing that with my faith. But it's been easier and easier to the point that now, with my graduation a couple weeks from now, there's no issue with them being oh, but the Sabbath, you have to graduate, we'll be there and everything. No, all they did was say, okay, so what are the days? So Wednesday, Thursday, Friday morning will work for you. And then we'll be able to just have dinners, or there's actually a graduation rehearsal, which is almost probably the same thing on that Thursday. And it's very easy even through my school, to just apply for not being there and then getting your diploma later.
Sure.
It's so easy because what you've taught, if you have the integrity to keep doing what you do throughout the time that you're observing it and showing to your parents or whoever, it makes it a lot smoother. So I wanted to have that as encouragement first.
Yeah, no, it's great. As a matter of fact, remember what it said about him giving favor, okay? He gives favor to those who've made their effort. Okay, so some of you are wondering why you're not having favor. Well, walk with integrity, you might find some favor. Okay? Okay, Chris.
And then the second thing I had was with James 4, verse 8, and also I guess maybe with 7. I was thinking about last night's Torah portion with Sara'at. With the cleansing of hands, sinners, yes. Because you count sinning having to do with the leprosy, the sara'at, and how it says, draw near to Elohim and he shall draw near to you. So if you're going to be humble and you have this problem, whatever kind of sin, you have to go to the priest, you have to get it worked on. So I thought that might be an interesting way of cleansing yourself, not just physically, but in this case, through that last night's Torah portion. That was interesting to me.
Sure. I can see how that could be connected somewhat. Quick note of correction on something I said that wasn't exactly correct. Matthew 18, which was when Mercy was asking, I said something about coming for the lost sheep of Israel. Actually, the verse, what he actually says was that the Son of Adam has come to save what was lost. And that's what he says before the 99 thing is the next verse. And what was lost that he said he came to find are the scattered Israelites. So you have to understand the perspective that the 99 and the 1 is giving as he's talking to the people in Israel, in the land, saying, yeah, but I didn't come to, I came here to get you guys prepared to help me go get those guys, all right? And so that was but I knew there was a verse in there that said essentially the same thing. Okay, Ashley.
Shabbat Shalom, Rabbi.
Shabbat Shalom.
I want to also ask you on 7 and 8, And this is something from my past, so it's not like that big of a deal, but going forward, I want to know if this were to somehow happen up again, how to handle it correctly. When I first came into this walk, and I was switching from what I was to where I am now, I had mentioned to Marcia, you're not number one, my Elohim is number one, then my husband, then my children. And she then turned around and said, no, your mother should always be number one. And that turned into a major blow up. How could that have been handled better? Because I'm sure I did something.
Well, look, it takes two to have a blow up to some degree. I mean, because you have to participate in it, throw gasoline on the fire, and that kind of stuff. So when you have that, nothing could have necessarily gone well, okay, as far as it's going well. But if once mom was going to put in that idea of, well, you got to put in your mom first, and you go, well, I don't see it exactly that way. And then she said, Mom, I don't want to argue with you. It's my beliefs. Please let's not fight about it. I love you. You're in the right position where you belong in my heart and whatever, okay? But you just have to bow out of the fight, okay? They want to fight. You don't have to fight with them, because otherwise that's where the pride comes in. You think they're threatening your belief system. No, they just don't agree with you.
How do you bow out of something if you always were taught that when you bow out, that's your death?
You change your belief system from bowing out is not death.
That is so hard.
It is hard. Look, a lot of you are trapped in well-established connections. This, if I do it, means this. If I do this, it equals that. If somebody does this, it means this. If somebody does this, it means or equals that. And so we need to reprogram that. Look, I've been doing that for you for the last 10 years with all these teachings. I've been reprogramming the understanding of this term or this idea doesn't mean what you always thought it meant. You have to reprogram that, okay? Your understanding of these important concepts, covenant, darkness, light, faith, belief, grace, whatever. All these terms were being used, but you didn't understand them correctly. So guess what? The same thing. When I'm telling you, you need to exit, find a nice, gentle way to just say, look, I don't want to fight with you. Let's just stop. That means peace. It doesn't mean death. Okay? That means, you just have to reprogram it. Okay? Well, you have to recognize that if somebody leaves a conversation, they don't die, so why would you think it's death? Well, that was a different world, okay? But you're not in that world, okay? See, look, everything is context, all right? In certain places, certain things meant certain things in that place. If you're not in that place, it doesn't mean that anymore, all right? It only applied in that place. Okay, some of you are in the military. Certain things work and don't work a certain way in the military. Then when you're back in civilian life, it's different, okay? And when you're in school, children, things are different in school than when you're not in school, when you go into the world of jobs and everything else. And so the way we interact with each other, the way you interact with authority figures, etc., changes, evolves a little bit and into what they're supposed to be based on the context of where you are, all right? So, you may have been in a very dangerous environment where doing certain things meant something that would put you in a lot of danger, where in most cases it doesn't, but in that place it did. So remembering, in case you ever go back there again, that is dangerous if that happens, is good to know. But also realizing that that's not the case in most other places is also good to know. Okay? Live stream.
Okay, from M. Abraham Nixon, says, Shabbat Shalom, Rabbi. You were talking about embarrassment having to do with pride. Well, what about Proverbs 12, verse 4? Is that pride or an expectation of representation? Not that my wife does such a thing, LOL.
All right. You're talking about embarrassment having to do with pride. What about Proverbs 12:4? So it says, a capable wife is the crown of her husband, but one causing shame is like rottenness in his bones. Okay? So, now, bear in mind, again, the difference between the husband doing the shameful, embarrassing thing and the wife doing it, okay? The wife doing it, especially in the societies that were very much vertical, like they were here, Everybody in that family, in that clan, in that tribe, whatever, whoever the top was, everything they did represented them. So here it's talking about a wife can be the crown, but also she can cause shame and be rottenness to his bones. However, what my point was to the ladies was, because this happens often enough that it's the man that does it, okay? I don't know, because we're goofy, we're boys at times, okay? And so we do things that you would rather us not do in public. We also tend to have a very lack of social awareness when we have our temper triggered or some other thing. We just don't care where we are. But that being said, the burden of responsibility is always pointing up, okay? So if the one at the top is doing the embarrassing thing, it does not reflect down, it only reflects up. So if the wife is doing something that's shameful, it reflects up. That means to the husband. The husband does something embarrassing, the wife can kick back and go, well, that's him, it's his embarrassment, he's at the top. It does not reflect on me. Of course, problem is society's built with a lot of busybody women to think everything reflects on everything, and so those women are all going to come up to you and say, I can't believe you let your husband act like that in public. And then you should say to them immediately, I can't believe you think that I should have anything to do with that. He's the husband. So listen, busybody, go mind your own business and your own husband. I'm serious, okay? But that's what's going to happen, is you're going to have all your busybody friends come over, oh, I feel so bad for you. Your husband made such a scene, and you know what you look at him and say? And that's on him, okay? Help them learn what that's all about. So this is not conflicted at all with 12.4. 12.4 is simply saying in the vertical structure that woman can be a crown, okay? A capable wife is a crown to her husband, but one that's bringing shame is like rottenness to his roots, to his bones. Okay? Next.
Okay, from M. Abraham Nixon, Shabbat Shalom, Rabbi. And thank you. According to
Shabbat Shalom.
Scripture, isn't adultery also associated with idolatry?
Well, that would be from a spiritual point of view. In other words, we don't physically interact with our Creator. I mean, there isn't another creator for us or other being claiming to be creator that we could physically interact with. Like if I'm married, which I am, right, and I have intimacy with my wife, I can't have intimacy with any other women. So it's the intimacy idea, okay? So Yahweh says, if you have intimacy with me, I am your creator, I am your God, you love me with everything, you can't share that with anybody else. So the pattern or the metaphor transfers over to idols, and idolatry is adultery. Not adultery like the commandment is talking about as far as, thou shalt not commit adultery. That's talking about us. The idolatry one is talking about idolatry, but in essence, he says when you do that, you're committing a form of adultery because you're sharing what is adultery really? Is it really just sex with somebody? No, it's the way Yeshua explained it. It's you're having an intimacy level with someone that's inappropriate unless they're your wife or your husband, right? Okay? So what he's saying is if you're going to have intimacy, that closeness of relationship with any other thing like a piece of stone or a piece of wood or a piece of clay, he says that's adultery as well as idolatry. That's a form of adultery. Does everybody get that now? Good. All right. So let's just use that for all you men out there. Understand that the more familiar you start behaving with somebody, especially because the men do this, ladies, you need to get the blame too on this. Because some of you, you encourage it, you seek it out, you add to the problem. That closeness that you're starting to feel to someone, that's intimacy. Okay? Can't have intimacy with someone of the opposite sex who's not married to you. That's reserved for that relationship. Okay? The only exception being that when you're exploring actually getting married, there will be certain levels of intimacy because you're starting to get to know each other. Maybe not physical intimacy, but the more you get to know each other, you're getting more familiar with each other. That's where you're exploring whether or not that intimacy could lead to a marriage. Okay? Because remember, Yeshua said that even without having committed the actual physical act, you could commit adultery. Okay? So being social with someone is a level of intimacy. And the more social, the more you feel close to the person, you feel like they're your friend, you feel like they care about you, and now we're ending up in all kinds of trouble. Can't do that, okay? Can't do that. All right, next.
From Monica De Leon, so James 4:13. If we have plans for the future, how can we distinguish pride, boasting, or just sharing your plans? It's just by the tone of the voice.
No, it's not just, look, I explained this. I'm sorry, Monica, I did explain this like 4 times. Okay? Look, it's the way that you share the information, okay? I think we all know what bragging sounds like, okay? If I'm saying something and it's bragging, you will feel like I'm trying to impress you, okay? If I'm just sharing information with you because I feel like it would be something that you would like to know or should know, hey, by the way, I know I haven't talked to you in a while, but I got this exciting thing I got going on over here that I just want you to know, because maybe you could pray for me, whatever. That's a different thing than saying, just bragging. Because, maybe you haven't seen somebody in a long time, you just want to brag about. You want to brag about your kids, you want to brag about this, you want to brag about that. Well, you just got to be careful about what you're doing. Are you sharing or are you bragging? The underlying driver. Okay, look, it's the same thing like when we did the personality stuff, right? The underlying driver of your motivation was either leadership or fun or peace or intimacy, right? Those are like your 4 choices there. So what's the driver when you're sharing the information? Are you wanting them to be impressed with you? Are you trying to impress them? Then it's bragging. So you should be honest with yourself as to why you're sharing the information, okay? All right, next.
That's all I have online, Rabbi. But I got, I guess, a question on verse 9, talking about lamenting and mourning. How do you distinguish that? Light of some stuff that that's been going on is, people will get their hang-ups and they're getting, and they get caught doing something. Is that, where's that delineate or that line between weeping and mourning and getting over it, or is that the weeping and gnashing of teeth? Is it, you tell people not to do that, but you said people don't listen, they still go do it, and then they'll come back, and they're quote unquote sorry that they did it, they lament and mourn, and then come back in, but they did what they wanted to do anyway. So,
all right. So this is actually a fairly simple question. The difference in these situations is, when you're talking about verse 8, I was very New York there for a second. When you're talking about verse 8, the idea here is you just found out something, let's say. Okay, you're finding out something and you have to no longer be able to have it, do it, or whatever it is. Or you have to do something you really don't want to do. So you lament and mourn and weep. The weeping and gnashing of teeth now, the difference is the weeping is in both, but the gnashing of teeth versus lamenting is giving up something. The gnashing of teeth is not wanting to accept consequence. So when you're talking about that, let's say we find out somebody did something and there was a consequence. The person who got the consequence may be gnashing teeth because they don't think they needed to get the consequence, thought it was wrong and unfair and all this other whiny stuff. The person who's friends with that person may be lamenting and mourning and weeping because that person is no longer here. You see the difference? So losing something, lament, mourn, and weep. Receiving a consequence you didn't want, gnashing teeth. Okay? Is that simple enough? All right, good. Rob gave me a thumbs up.
Okay, from Wake Up Smiling, I have a belief that breaking the Sabbath, for instance, is adultery with my relationship with Yahweh. Is this correct?
On some level, I guess we could spin it that way. Let me explain why, okay? What is, again, we're talking about in relationships. So the relationship with my wife, if I start choosing anything over her, I guess that thing could be considered adultery. If I desire something more than her, if I want to be with somebody more than her, if I prefer my job over her, men, you do that sometimes to your wives, right? So, but not in the more, that'd be a stretch to get there, but I could see how that could be. So by that same token, then breaking the Sabbath, which is a special, you know what it'd be like if you missed your anniversary with your spouse? That's a date you should keep in mind and do something knowing it's your anniversary. Well, this is a date that we're supposed to have with the Creator. If we choose to do something else instead of be with Him, then I guess in a sense that's adultery, because you're now putting somebody in front of Him and over Him. You're choosing somebody over Him. Okay? And you wouldn't choose something over him unless, in essence, you had more strong emotion about the other thing than about him. I was going to say intimacy, but it may be that you're choosing to do something like, look, I had a guy who chose to go to a football game on Saturday instead of be at services. He didn't have any intimacy with the football team, but he certainly had, his heart was, for his alma mater. He wanted to go to that school's football game. All right? I was in Knoxville, Tennessee. The Vols were playing. This guy was basically a shamish, being groomed to be a shamish, and somebody offered him free tickets. How many of you could turn down something you shouldn't have or do if it was free? That can be tough. Our relationship was great till that moment because I busted him. Now, I wasn't mean about it. I just teased him and said, hey, how was the game? He goes, oh, you know. I said, of course I know. I didn't look at him like, what's wrong with you? Well, I didn't scold him, I didn't correct him, but he was so embarrassed. It's like, your choice. It was a dumb choice, I gave him an opportunity to say, I made a big mistake, I'm sorry. He never did, never owned it. He didn't deny that he went. I'm just saying he never owned that it was wrong to do. So, my answer would be, I suppose that, from a certain perspective, you could look at it that way, especially if it helps you not break the Sabbath, okay? Is there anything else that came in?
Yes, sir, one more. Monica De Leon, James 4:17. I have a huge problem. I'm helping and enabling. When do you know they need it, but also they can do?
All right, so that's a little bit murky, I guess. You do want to be careful not to enable, okay? And you don't want to, and if you enable enough, then people feel entitled. Two terrible things. I mean, they are absolutely terrible to the person you're doing it to. You think you're helping them, but you're really creating a big problem for them, okay? So that being said, if they're adults, you should be doing almost nothing. If they're adults, you should be setting them to find the professionals that they need to help them, whatever it is. If they're adults, if you are going to help them, make sure that it's help that's going to be teaching them what to do so they don't keep coming back to you for it the next time, okay? If you're creating a loop, you're creating a problem, okay, Monica? So if I help you, and now you've learned that I will help you with this thing, and you're going to keep coming back to me every time it happens, I've created a problem. I've created a loop. Don't create loops, okay? I'll come and help you so that you don't ever have to ask me for that help again, because now you know what to do, okay? And you have a path to fixing it or whatever it is. Not that I'll never help you again, but I'm not going to create this feedback loop where you're going to go, oh, that worked, and every time this comes up, I'm just going to go to that person and I'm just going to get the help I need. And then I'm never going to figure out how to handle it myself. And that's when we become enabling, okay? So a lot of people have a huge problem with this because you know why? You have a lot of blue empathy, sympathy, which is not bad, but if you apply it wrong, it can be a problem for people. You actually have something really wonderful that gets you in trouble. You care, all right? You care, and you don't like to see people suffer. You don't like to see them having any challenges or problems because you care. And in that caring, you don't understand that you're hurting them. Because short term, you're helping them. Long term, you're creating a problem or making the problem worse. Okay? Which is why we make everybody have to contact us about everything that could turn into enabling. Okay? Like, for example, let me just throw this out there for everybody because you'll figure this out a little bit. During Passover and unleavened bread in Sukkot, we have something in the dining hall called seating only, no meal, right? And for that, you need to call and make a case for why you need that. Everybody knows that. Shavuot is going to have a lot less people. Theoretically, we could have as many people as we want, have seating only. We're not doing that. We don't want to train you wrong. We want you to always think of it the same every feast. Even though we won't have the space problem, the reason we had to make it such a tight thing in the other feasts is because we only had limited seating. We could just have everybody who wanted to come just come and sit because we had more people coming than we had seats, right? Not going to have that problem necessarily for Shavuot. But to keep the pattern of understanding clean, any of you need seating only and you put it on your paperwork, you're still going to have to talk to elder and remind us why you need it, etc. Okay? Don't look at us like, well, I said this. This is a process. Learn to follow the process. Billy says, trust the process. Well, you got to follow the process. Okay? Oh, but don't, you start whining, then that's exactly why I put the process in, so you can learn to get over that. Okay? Just get over that. Learn to follow directions. All right. So that way we're not because if I did that for Shavuot, then you'll think the next feast, oh, well, I was good for this and I was good for this. No, every feast I want you to get approved. Just remind us, and we'll remember you anyway if it's the same people most of the time, but just go through the process because that's the only right, fair way to do it, and it trains you correctly. Okay? It doesn't start creating a wrong thought process, a wrong pattern of behavior. All right, anything else, Rob? All right, children are all down now? All right, good.